All right, so today we're gonna go over how to get wider lats. Now I remember being a kid, somewhere along the way, someone told me if you wanna get wide, you gotta train wide. Specifically what they meant is wide grip pull downs, wide grip pull-ups, everything you could think of with that wide grip, because to them, they thought that worked, right? But for 95% of people, that's not gonna work. Unless you're genetically predisposed to have really good lats, those movements aren't gonna work. So what you need to do is actually bring it in closer. And the second most important part of that is you need to follow the actual motion of your lats. So your lats work best on an arcing motion where you keep a fixed position with that elbow and you're pulling through that motion the entire time. If you don't know what I mean, stay tuned. All right, so the first thing we're gonna start off with is pull downs. Now, I probably shouldn't even label these pull downs because it's more of a pullover motion, but that's just what we're gonna call it. So the trick here, or the key here, is that you're not gonna do a normal motion of pulling straight down to your chest, because think about it this way, right? So at the top of that motion, to engage your lats, you gotta pull with your rhomboids, right? A little bit of rear delt, everything pulls back, even trap in there. As you're coming through, you get that back engage. At the very bottom, you're pulling with those biceps. If you're not careful, you're pulling with your shoulders, right? So how can we limit all of that motion and really just focus on pulling from those lats, right? Well, the trick here is you're gonna do two things differently. One, you're gonna keep that same plane of motion with your lats, right? So elbow will stay fixed. You're never gonna move this position with this arm. It's literally gonna rotate over top of you. But to keep a nice stretch involved here, you're gonna lean forward on the way up and lean back on the way down. But as you'll see, my elbows don't change position the entire time. And the nice part about this is that it mimics that of a standing, cable pullover. But when you're doing a cable pullover, I'm sure you felt this before, if you're not careful, since those arms are straight, your traps can jump in really quickly. Like as a trainer, trying to train somebody on that, you'll pull your hair out, because the first thing they'll do is as they start to pull down, they'll pull their traps into it. This, the nice thing is your hands are tucked in, so your elbows are gonna do all the work, and you're gonna be pulling from that elbow forward. The one thing I don't want you to get stressed about or hung up on is the handle I'm using, right? I'm using a mag grip handle, but just use a regular T-bar handle. That same motion can be applied, and I'm gonna show you in the next exercise actually using that one instead. All right, so the next exercise we're gonna do is a seated cable row. And now we're gonna tweak this in two different ways. One, we're gonna keep that same motion that we just did over there on the pull downs. But two, and I kind of developed this or even noticed this, I'm sure plenty of people have done this before, but I trained with a couple guys who had really overly developed lats. They were just ridiculous. They actually turned their whole shape forward, their shoulders rolled forward, everything. But every time we trained lats, their lats would just get bigger and bigger and bigger, and their range of motion sucked, right? It was just awful, it was bad form. But I started doing and lifting like that because I thought, well, if they can do it, maybe there's something to it, right? Maybe it's not that you're just so genetically gifted, but they're also aided by their bad form, right? So that's what I do. I actually tweak this exercise, get a little bit of bad form into it, and really just isolate those lats. What you're gonna do is put your feet as low as you can on the cable row. So for me, I'm on the ground here, so this is a different kind of bench, but normally they're a little bit seated higher, so you put them nice and low, so that way your elbows are out of the way of your knees. And what you're gonna do is roll your back forward and open up your lats and flare them as much as possible. So you really only have this nice small motion where it's just your lats working. Now normally in this motion your biceps would get engaged too much, but since we're keeping that same arc with our lats, it's gonna be all lats the entire time. Now you're gonna get some funny looks in the gym because it's bad form, right? But if you can engage your lats more doing this, suffer through the bad form. Let's get some growth out of it. Who cares what people think? You get big enough, nobody's gonna say shit to you. All right, so we're gonna finish with a not so glamorous exercise, which is pullovers. Now, these are the absolute best, I think, for lats, but they're not really fun to do. They're tough. Sometimes they'll jump into your triceps, but what I want you to focus on here, the biggest thing, is working on that shoulder flexibility. Because if you can get those shoulders flexible enough where you can really stretch back in there and feel it all in your lats, the key is you're gonna turn this into a quarter movement, right? So if you're stretching this far back, you're really gonna come up a quarter of the way, right? So it's a really small movement, and that way you won't engage your triceps at all. You won't lose any of that movement in anywhere else in your shoulders, anything. It'll just be all your lats stretched and that little bit of engagement coming up, and that's it. It's really a partial movement, but I think that's the absolute best way to do pullovers. All right, so I know if you master that form, you're gonna really get a lot of engagement out of those lats. They're gonna get wider. So if you can, leave a comment below, tell me what you thought of it. Like, subscribe, do all that wonderful stuff. I'll get some more videos out to you. Have an incredible day. Get after it, get growing.